Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Whole Wellness Mama Summit, where we're unlocking the healthiest, joy-filled mom in you using strategies from various wellness and parenting experts. I'm Amy Nesbitt, and I have been looking forward to this conversation about staying out of pain and living in wellness and joy with Dr. Tawny Kross. She's the founder of the Body Mind Trust Method, which is the system she implements to take business-minded moms with chronic stress and chronic pain out of pain and survival mode so that they can thrive at work and at home. That's what we all want, right? She graduated with her doctorate in physical therapy from Duke University, and her journey as a chronic pain specialist and coach evolved from nearly a decade of practice at the Veterans Hospital. And because of the complex histories, physical and sexual traumas that veterans have, in order to better serve and help them heal from that chronic pain, she grew her practice, knowledge, and breadth of expertise to include nutrition, hypnosis, guided imagery, mindfulness, pain neuroscience education, the whole gamut, and more. So when she's not working on all things related to chronic pain, she enjoys church, hike with her two kids and her husband, exercise of all kinds, playing board games, reading sci-fi fantasy books, or trying to come up with really bad, or depending on who you are, really good mom jokes. And I must say, I have personally witnessed many of these things because we're good friends from college, and I love that we get to help moms together like this. So welcome, Dr. Tani.
Thank you for having me, and you can just call me Tawny.
So will do. So, for those meeting you for the first time, can you share your quick story of how you came to where you are?
Well, as you know, Amy, I started with landscape architecture, and then, of course, it was a very easy transition right into physical therapy. It was actually really interesting because I actually always had an interest in working in a physical way, like being able to see the progress that people are making on a physical level. And in college, I was actually interested in psychology. However, I was steered away from that because certain parents didn't agree with that sort of thing.
None of us
But
experienced that, right?
but that being said, the field of chronic pain started to become much more of a interest for me because in the veteran world, there's just so many, like pretty much everything that we see is of chronic nature. Like if you were to take the average American, it's or even just society in general, it's 1 out of 5 people that experience chronic pain. In the veteran population, I would say it's easily closer to 75%. So it was pretty interesting because we would see these incidences where people would come back to PT again and again, and they weren't getting any better. And we're like, well, we learned all this stuff in school. Why isn't this stuff applying? So it kind of came out of this sense of desperation of like, how can I help? Like, how come what I'm doing right now isn't helpful? And it started to evolve to really incorporate a bunch of other areas. And psychology actually became a really, really big piece of the puzzle. Because when we think about pain or actually health in general, it really needs to come from this mind and body approach. So I've got the body part with the physical therapy, and then we've got the mind stuff now with psychology. And it's marrying those two pieces together that has really been empowering for the veterans themselves as well as my clients and how I help and provide care.
Mhm. Yeah, most of us have experienced physical pain in various ways, but you're talking about chronic pain and people that have chronic pain, especially as parents, it is really hard to deal with. Can we kind of lay the baseline of what we mean when we say chronic pain?
Yeah. So the very easiest definition for chronic pain is any pain that's lasted longer than 3 months. But that itself is not really very telling and doesn't really speak to what's going on. So I would say there's a difference between acute pain. Acute pain is kind of like something that just happened from an injury, like you sprained your ankle or you put your hand to fire. That would be an acute injury or acute chronic or acute pain. Chronic pain itself is well, I would say pain in general is a harm alarm. And when I say harm alarm, it's something that is telling you, oh my gosh, something's wrong and you need to protect this area. Like if you put your hand to fire, if you didn't know your hand was in pain, you may not take your hand out of the fire. So acute injuries typically have a direct association with something that's um, causing that alarm to trigger. Chronic pain, it's almost as if the fire has been removed and your alarm goes off anyway. Sometimes I use the example of, let's say, like a smoke alarm. if your smoke alarm is super duper sensitive, yes, it's going to pick up obviously a fire. However, it also picks up steam from your shower, and it will your alarm will still ring as if there was a fire, even though it's just steam from the shower. So that's kind of what happens with the nervous system, with the body with chronic pain, is that there's this ongoing signal that you have to protect something, even though there may not actually be anything there.
Got it. Yeah. A lot of us will kind of look at certain achy points and we often attribute it to age or, like you said, something happened. But you look at things on a more holistic approach, like we were saying, right? With you added all these different things in, you added the mind component. And how do you see that playing out in the clients that you have?
Yeah, so I like to describe the body as a bit of an ecosystem, right? And it's not the body's affected by so many different things. So you'll hear people say stuff like, "Oh, I'm getting older and now I can notice when the weather's changing," right? So
Mhm.
we know that the weather seems to offset people's nervous systems. We also know that a lot of people with chronic pain will have some emotional stress, and they'll usually say that seems to amplify my pain. We also hear a lot about dietitians and nutritionists say, oh, like, if you start to change what you eat and you eat more anti-inflammatory foods, that also seems to impact the body. So it's actually a number of different things from every field combined that impacts how much our body performs well or how much it doesn't perform well. And so when you think about treating pain, because it does really rope in every aspect of things that impact your health, you really have to approach it from a whole person, holistic approach. Because if you don't, you're kind of just treating like one little piece of it. And none of us are just walking pieces of flesh or like, you know, areas that need to be addressed with some nutrition. All of us have just complexity about us. And we really want to look at that entire piece.
Yeah. And you also talk about, I know we've talked before, pains related to that lacking of purpose and joy, because pain just kind of sucks that away, right? Can you share your thoughts on that connection there?
Yeah, the way that I like to think about this or describe it to people is pain itself kind of causes your basic instincts, your basic reactions to kick in, like your fight or flight responses, right? So if you're, let's just take an example. If you're being chased by a dinosaur, you're not worried about like your purpose or your joy in your life. You're just purely focused on get this like dinosaur away from me. Um, and obviously, with an acute pain, with something that's just okay, a bear's chasing or dinosaur chasing me, as soon as that bear or dinosaur goes away, your system can just go back online and you can live your normal life. However, people with chronic pain often end up just purely focusing on this repeated stressor, and everything seems to hurt, and they're like, okay, I can't do this, can't do that, and so they start to whittle down their life. They a lot of There's a lot of social isolation. They're afraid to talk to families, afraid of talking to people. Um, they are afraid of doing the movements, obviously, that they care for. And then there's just a whole total shutdown with the system, and you're likely to find a lot of people saying, I just feel like I'm surviving all the time. Like I don't know how to get back to going beyond just dealing with life.
Mhm.
Um, so when we start to work on things called purpose or joy, you start to actually nurture the parts of you that know how to thrive rather than just live in survival mode. So, yes, we do want to help people with their health and with pain, but if you really want to take people to wellness, you want to focus on the things that spark joy, that spark value, that really bring them out of this survival state.
That speaks so dearly to my heart, because for those that have been with me for a while know that that is a deep desire for what I want to share with moms too, that we need to be able to find joy in all the different things in our lives, not just as all the different roles we have, but for ourselves as human beings, as who we used to be before momhood and all that. So what are some things that people can start doing, because it can be overwhelming to say, okay, I have this pain that I want to get past and be able to go, like find those joyful things again. What can they start doing? What are some of your tangible, I guess, next steps for them?
Um, I would say that it's actually very case dependent. And a tangible next step is to start to ask yourself questions. Like, what sort of things do I remember when I was young that like I really loved to do that really gave me pleasure? Not because I had to do it or because, like it felt made me feel achievement, but more along the lines of like that sense of like, um, gosh, what's a good one? Like so I tend to be pretty competitive. I think you know this around me, Amy.
I may have
And
seen it from time to time.
but what it's not a sense of achievement. There's this sense of aliveness when it comes to competing that I can't seem to access anywhere else. And I'm just like so excited. Like so anything, like whether it's like being the winner of a board game or whatever, I'm just like, okay, how can I do this thing? And that sense of I wouldn't call it like because I like to beat people, but it makes me feel alive. Um, so that's something that sometimes I think about. I was just working with a client and she was sharing that all day long she was just focused on healing things, like just working on making herself feel better. And I just told her, hey, this was about a month ago. I want you to focus on something that makes you laugh. Like just look for something that makes you laugh. And they're like, you know what? I really liked watching The Office. And so for the past month, they've incorporated something that made them laugh, like watching The Office, and they're like, that was so different and it felt so good. So just again, simple questions like what actually makes you feel a sense of joy, humor, or whatever else, and then go do it.
But doing it, that's a really good point because we know some of those things, but we come up with all these excuses, right? Of, oh, we don't have time. Oh, whatever it is. And the go do it, the action part is really important. So there are a lot of misconceptions I'm sure that you hear about pain. Is there anything that you want to share about the biggest misconceptions people might have and how this is hindering them from living their life in the joy and purpose that they want?
Sure. So I would say the two biggest misconceptions that I find, even though some people might be working in the mind body field, number one, some people are too focused about the body. They're like, there's something wrong with me. There's something wrong with me. I have to fix this. I have to fix this. I have to fix this. And just to give a snippet of the fact that it's unlikely something's wrong with you, almost half the population, if you were to do like a MRI or X-ray scan, actually have really weird things like bone on bone arthritis, herniated discs, rotator cuff tears, whatever. And that half the population actually doesn't have any pain,
Oh,
which is to say that like if someone, let's say you and I, Amy, both had a rotator cuff tear, but only one of us had pain, but our tears look the same, what are we saying is really to quote blame unquote for the pain, right? And so in our old model of pain, we actually realized we couldn't describe more than 25% of the population, right? Which is a pretty crap model.
uh-huh.
So there's obviously with chronic pain, there's some things you want to address physically for some people. Generally speaking, though, there's not anything to fix. And then you have on the opposite end all the mind people. They're like, okay, well, that means pain's in your head, pain's in your head, pain's in your head. You've got to fix something up here, fix something up here. And that's not true either. And it can also very much invalidate people and their experience of pain. And they can start to blame themselves like, I'm creating this myself. This is my fault. This is my fault. Well, of course, it's not your fault. So I would say one of the biggest things I like to emphasize is pain is both 100% physical. You always experience it in your body in some shape or form. And then 100% psychological, even when it's pain, like if you put your hand to fire.
Mm.
So I say this real quick just because I want to make sure to clear things up. When you put your hand to fire, you don't actually have to experience pain. What happens though is your nerves run a message to your brain, and your brain goes, ooh, your hand's in fire. You need to protect that thing. And then it would actually produce pain so you can put your hand off. And it happens very quickly. But it's a two-way messaging system. So it's both in the body because you've got your hand in fire, and then it's also in the mind because your brain has to be connected to that loop in order for it to protect you with pain. So I want to just clear things up and make sure the biggest thing you want to remember is that pain is always all things, both things, physical and in the mind.
Oh, I love that. We like to end by giving everyone like a quick action or challenge to complete today to start making those changes or just implement something that they've learned because like we just said earlier, action is really the important part, right? To just start doing things instead of just being in our heads. And so we kind of talked about an action, but do you have a specific challenge for our mamas today?
Yes. This is going to be a mind-based challenge. I love it when people can start catching their thoughts. And when I say catching their thoughts, I just want people to be aware of what they're thinking. And it doesn't always have to be pain related. Like for the people that I see, they might unknowingly be saying stuff to themselves like, "Ah, I just have to live with this forever." Or this is a sucky thing and like I can't do the things I used to do, or I can't do anything at all. And then on a non-pain related level, just as a mom, you might constantly be keeping yourself in high alert by saying things like, oh, I need to do this. I have so many things to do. I have to keep up with my kids. I have to be whatever. So catching your thoughts is number one, the most important thing, because you have to be aware of what you're thinking in order to start to shift them into a helpful way. And then the challenge is you want to start to balance out those thoughts. And when I say balance, it's not to trade one thing for another. For example, sometimes people say stuff like, oh, so instead of saying I'm in pain, I should say I'm not in pain. I'm like, no, it's not the opposite. It's more of a balanced thought. So you want to use the word and rather than but. So for example, some people might say, I'm in a lot of pain today and I showed up.
Mm.
Right? That's a way of balancing out a thought. Versus if you said but, you might say something like, I'm in a lot of pain today, but I showed up. Right? There's a different
So negative.
way.
Mhm.
Like it really brings everything into a place of like more hurt and suffering.
Mhm.
So the challenge is catch the thought, figure out what you're thinking, and then see if you can and it and end it with something that really allows you to restore balance to the nervous system.
Mm. Yeah, our mind is a very, very strong tool, right?
Mhm.
I know you also have a fantastic freebie for everyone. Can you share what that is and how people can connect with you further?
Sure. I actually have two. One of them is I, it's called something called the Not Just Another Pain Recovery Guide. And it lists the 7 areas that I find are really important to look at in terms of the body and the nervous system to make your way towards having bigger changes and healing. And the other one is a quick snippet on kind of how I describe pain and seeing things on a holistic level and helping you identify the areas that you might want to work on to start to help you make those shifts with pain. I think that was all your questions, right?
Yes, 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 yes. You answered them.
Okay.
Great. So, anything else you want to share with our mamas before we wrap up?
Um, yes, give yourself a break.
Oh, it's a good one.
Yes, like all day long, I think we are really unfair and unkind to ourselves.
Mhm.
And if you can imagine that, let's say life is busy, which it always is anyway, and you have a drill sergeant yourself yelling at yourself all day, that just puts your nervous system in more of a fight or flight state and is not very kind to you. So just starting to nurture better self-talk and realizing that it's so important and helpful and productive to actually take breaks.
So often we forget to take those breaks, forget to give ourselves the grace that we give to others a lot easier, right? So thank you for that reminder. Thank you, Tawny, for bringing such valuable information about pain and just the synchronous, is that a word? Being in
I think
sync
so.
with the body and the mind, all of the above, to find that wellness for ourselves. I value you. Thank you, everyone, for being there. As always, drop your questions in the Facebook group. We'll be answering those and go do the challenge. Let us know how it went and come back for more amazing summit speakers.